Welcome to the Experts Podcast, where we take you behind the scenes of what it really means to be in the media. Featuring interviews with media-stable experts and some of Australia's most prominent media. We'll break down some of the myths, the fears, the skills and the knowledge needed to succeed in the media. The Experts Podcast is for the business owner, communicator, PR professional, leader of industry or anyone looking to develop their profile to be a recognised expert. The Experts Podcast is powered by MediaStable.
Well, hello everyone. Welcome to the Experts Podcast. Oh, just a little bit of a premature chat there, Lana.
Just too excited,
The
Nick.
microphone wasn't completely in position. This is the amateurish activity that goes on.
Well, it's
sometimes
Friday,
here.
isn't it?
It is Friday, but
Yeah.
it's when people are listening, it's Tuesday.
Well,
It's
that's
Wednesday.
true.
It's Thursday. It's whenever they want to listen. But we've got a great little expert in the Experts Podcast here today.
We do.
It's all thing China.
Yes.
Chinese. We're seeing a lot of that in the media at the moment. And
Certainly.
obviously with business and what's going on with COVID and the
Yep.
pandemic, etc. But this is a little bit of a different tact here. We're going to talk to a negotiation expert. We're going to talk to someone who's been there, done this, and actually does it every single day. Her name is Leonie McKeon. She's an author, she's a speaker, and she's all things Chinese. How are you, Leonie?
I'm very well, thank you, Nick. How's yourself?
Oh, going well. I'm not sure what the correct. How do we say hello to someone in Chinese?
Ni hao.
Ni hao.
Ni hao.
Oh, I did know that.
Very good. And if you want to say hello to someone in Chinese of a higher authority, you say nin hao.
Oh, good to know.
So there you go. So I don't know where you see me in that hierarchy.
Ming hao,
Can
I
just
see
say
you,
Ni hao
Leonie.
or nin hao?
Ming hao, I see you at that level there, Leonie. Now, Leonie, talk to us a little bit about. I want to talk about your book very shortly, but tell us a little bit about you, because one of the great things that I love about experts that not only have gone through the disciplines of educating themselves in this particular space, I love it when people immerse themselves in it. And Leonie, you have certainly immersed yourself in all things China.
I have done that, and it was really by accident. I was travelling around the world many years ago with my friend with a backpack on, and we travelled for about 18 months. Part of that was living on a kibbutz in Israel, and some of that was in India and Turkey and Europe, and we ran out of money. And unfortunately, it does happen after 18 months. It was like, oh, gee, we have to find a job. And so off we went to Hong Kong, and unfortunately, we didn't really see that we looked like we had been travelling around India, and everybody was walking around in smart business suits. So no one was going to give us a job in Hong Kong. So we met someone in a youth hostel who said, go to Taiwan and teach English. And really? We can do that? He said, yeah, go off to Taiwan. So I said to my friend, we can either come back to Australia, go back to Australia, or go to Taiwan. Let's go for broke. There's a bit of credit left on the credit card. Let's do it. So off we went, and I hardly knew they spoke Mandarin in Taiwan. I hardly knew anything about the culture. It was really just survival, really pure survival. And in those days, there was no internet, so no email, no online things. And we were staying in a youth hostel where there was a notice board, and it's English teachers wanted. And unfortunately, what the guy didn't tell us was that they wanted American English teachers. So I learned how to change my accent.
Why did they want American English teachers?
America is Taiwan is very focused on America, and it's really it is very connected with America. So that's really why. And so, a lot of the Taiwanese would go to American universities. Yeah. However, a few years later, I lived in Taiwan then for 5 years, teaching English as a second language. I edited a series of children's books and also had a small clothing business, bringing clothing from Kathmandu into Taiwan. So I was a bit of an entrepreneur there, like the Chinese. I absorbed the entrepreneurship on the Chinese streets, and life came to a bit of a brick wall because I had no university degree at that time. And I wanted to come back to Australia and go down the academic road. So my experience is upside down to most people's. Most people get the get the academic qualification, and then they go off and, go off and practice their Chinese and live in other places or whatever, when you could do that. However, I did it the other way around. So
I like that, Leonie. I like the upside down approach.
The upside down approach is pretty good, Lana, because what happens with the upside down approach is that you are like a sponge, because you've got no academic analysis in your head to analyse things. So you really don't judge anything. You're just like a sponge.
Love it.
And you see things and, yeah.
You've really soaked that all up into your books and your teachings. I mean, it's not just books. You've done a lot of speaking, Leonie, as well, and then obviously your media. But the thing I love, or one of the things I love about your books, is that it's so easy to digest. It's in a really kind of practical, it's not like War and Peace. It's very easy to pick up some of the tips.
And Leonie, I'll jump in there, because I just want to bring up on on book 3 on page strategy 13. The strategies for attack. The strategies for attack. Lana, we are not talking about a military book here, but we are talking about something here, because we've got to understand the psyche and the mindset of those that we deal with. And I think, I'm going to dive deep into this a little later with you, Leonie, around not that this book is just for Chinese. I think this is actually for all negotiation. But here's strategy 13. Beat the grass to startle the snake.
Ooh.
Which means to create a situation that will provoke a revealing response.
Interesting.
And I was just thinking about the other day, because I was playing golf the other day, Leonie, and I was told, take your golf club in and smack that grass, because it's snake season at the moment, isn't it? And I don't want to see any snakes out there. But I love the way that you've worded this, because I think we need to understand how the Chinese think if we're going to be able to negotiate or do any business with them.
We do. And the books that you're reading, my books there, are based on the art of war, which they're called the 36 Chinese strategies. And, people say to me, Leonie, what is the core of understanding China? Is it relationships? Is it business cards? Is it where you sit? Is it hierarchy? Is it the language? What is it? It's the 36 Chinese strategies. Because when you understand how these strategies operate, then you can understand China. Everything comes from that.
Yes.
So your the strategy beat the grass to startle the snake. You're in a meeting, someone puts something down on the table. You're not used to it. You thought that everything was planned, and then all of a sudden it's resulting in confusion. Beat the grass to startle the snake could be, we want to send 1,000 students to Australia when students were coming to Australia and when they could come to Australia, and they will come again.
Yep.
The reality is that you cannot do that, because they've got to get their visas, they've got to get it, and an Australian person might go, oh no, we can't do that, and then they start freaking out. It's better to just roll along with it, not worry about it. Say yes, because you know it's not true.
Yeah. Oh, look, it's
so you play the game.
And that is the core of it, isn't it, Leonie? It's to play the game. And I think sometimes in business, and particularly here in Australia and even some of the Western countries, they don't like too many games, or they struggle to understand not just the rules of the game, but just the little idiosyncrasies that go on that is so particular to China. And I think this is where your book, Lure of the Tiger, the Bewilder the Dragon, all the connections and books that you bring together, they help us understand it a little bit more from their perspective, not necessarily ours.
Well, that's true. And the books they're grouped in groups of 6 strategies, because there's 36 strategies, and each group of 6 has a name. So the first group are the advantageous strategies. Then you've got the opportunistic strategies, the confusion strategies. So each one of my books has 6 strategies, and they're small books. They're not, like you said, not like War and Peace.
Leonie, I can read them. If I can read them, anyone can read them, believe me.
Because business people don't have the time to read War and Peace. They want a book that's about 100 pages that answers their questions. Okay, this is what happens.
Leonie, I think broadly, though, what you're doing is fantastic, you know, just obviously not just from a Chinese negotiation perspective, but just from a business knowledge perspective. And I think strategy and negotiation is something really I think we should be teaching it in schools.
Correct.
And I think even as a, you know, business professional, whether you're a business owner or whether you're an employee, it is something that is always going to be an incredibly valuable part of your arsenal. And I love that you're bringing something different to the table, Leonie. It's not something that we would necessarily be that familiar with in Australia, but it's something we need to be wrapping our heads around.
Well, Sun Tzu, who wrote The Art of War, has a reputation of being the best strategist in the world. And
yes.
This text, The Art of War, is 2,500 years old. So it's still to this day. It's like saying, you know, it's like talking about Shakespeare and playwriting. This is the strategist of the world. So, you know, let's learn off these writings and these strategies. Let's look at Australia, because we're talking about Australia at the moment. We don't have a method for negotiation. Look, you can type in negotiation. There are books getting to yes, and some of those books. But however, if you say negotiation, you know, it's like, oh, okay, well, I'll type it in the internet, the steps through it or whatever. See, for a Chinese person, negotiation, the actual word means everything. It doesn't just mean that when you sit down in the boardroom and start talking about a price. It's actually when you're picked up at the airport, when you're going out for dinner, when you're talking to people, when you're handing your business card. The actual negotiating the price is a very small part of the whole negotiation.
Ah.
Negotiation is everything.
It's like one
So
big
the word
is
itself
it like one big performance?
Well, okay. It's like the word itself encompasses a lot more than it encompasses in Australia. It encompasses a small component of the business for us. For Chinese people, it encompasses a whole way of thinking. Yeah, it's like talking to a monk. Their world is about meditation and all this kind of thing, whereas we might do meditation once a week. Do you see what I mean? Their world is encompassed by that. It's the same with Chinese people with negotiation.
Yeah, and I think, Leonie, culturally, you just sort of touched on it then. I think culturally our approach is so different here in Australia, but obviously the business interests we have in China are enormous. And, you know, despite there being a bit of friction, obviously, in the peak of the coronavirus pandemic and the investigations, et cetera, that were launched, they're still an incredibly important trading partner and business partner for Australia.
They're our most important trading partner. And our business with China, our communication with China, probably for the last 10 years, up until the last couple of years, has gone along quite smoothly. It's had its little hiccups, and we've gotten over those. Now we need to play the game.
Do you think it'll get back on track, Leonie?
Absolutely. I have no doubt. It will get back on track. There's still a lot of business being done in China. And so, you know, you've got companies, for example, companies like new information technology companies. They're companies that don't really worry about what's going on because it doesn't affect them. They're IT companies. You know, they might be doing some infrastructure in China, that kind of thing. So they're not food companies. China is attacking the companies, things like barley and you know, all of those types of things that can really spark off in the media. So that's a very strategic way of doing it, and there's a strategy behind that. And I think that if we were to understand China, we would understand how to play the game.
Right.
You know, and it's about being able to play the game. I mean, I say it's like, you know, we're on the tennis court and we're playing with Roger Federer. We've got to learn how to pick up the racket. Yeah?
Do we have to play Roger? Can't we play someone a little less known? Someone a little less good?
Well, unfortunately, this is how it is. So, and, you know, it's like these strategies you can go to China and, Shanghai and Beijing and places like that are amazing international cities. You look at Shanghai and it's got fashion that's, 3 years ahead.
Yeah.
Infrastructure that's amazing, architecture that's incredible. However, the 36 strategies don't change. They are a fundamental way of thinking. I'll give you an example. Okay. In Australia, now you don't have to be religious with this question. All right. But if I said to you, Nick and Lana, have you heard of the 10 Commandments? You'd probably say yes.
Yep.
I'm not worried if you abide by them or whatever, if you're religious.
I try to, Leonie.
Okay.
Thou shalt not kill.
But,
thou shalt not look on thou.
See, Nick, you're even able to joke about it. You know this. You know it. You're able to throw a joke in there, okay? Because it's a fundamental part of our culture.
Sure.
All right? Right. If I said prior to reading my books and getting to know me, have you heard of the 36 Chinese strategies? You
No
both
way.
would probably say, right, exactly. Now, let's turn that question around in China. Have you heard of the 36 strategies? Of course. And they'd probably joke like you, Nick.
Yeah,
you
true.
just did. Right? Because they know it and it's fundamental. Have you heard of the 10 Commandments? Not really. You see where I'm coming from?
It's their religion, isn't it? It's what they've been brought up on. It's the very core, the essence of who they are.
That's right. It's fundamental, and it's not even like it's taught in schools. I mean, it's people say to me, where do Chinese people learn these? Well, if you look at idioms, don't cry over spilt milk. Where did you learn that? I don't know. Somewhere. I have no idea where I learned it. It's just it's in my culture.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that someone's standing there crying and the milk is spilling. It has a code. It's like fool the emperor to cross the sea, strategy 1. It doesn't mean that the emperor is crossing the sea. It actually means it's got a code into it. So once you understand the code, and that's why most people who've read The Art of War, in fact, I have been doing this now for about 20 years. I have presented to thousands of people. I have given hundreds of workshops. I've consulted hundreds of Australian people, all right? And not one person has said to me they understood or they know about the 36 Chinese strategies. They've read The Art of War, but they don't understand it.
Leonie, this is why we need you.
That's right.
This is why we need you. Now, listen, we did a Meet the Media a couple of weeks back now. We had 2GB, 3AW, and the project. I will say one thing, okay? Leonie, I didn't do a lot of specialist introductions for the 275 people that went on that particular Meet the Media, but I did one for you. And the reason I did one for you was because when the question was raised, it was around China and whether the Chinese subject and issues were of relevance there to media, particularly in a COVID pandemic time. All three media, the project, 3AW, 2GB said yes indeed. So I did send that out as a personal introduction too, because I don't think there's anyone better at this point to be able to be talking about China and what's going on. Thank you. I don't think we understand. And to that point, having cruised through your book myself and others that either in the art of negotiation, whether it be with China or not, this is the kind of thing that you need. Can I just ask you a quick fire questions around China? And obviously you've just discussed there a bit about around the trade. And you say it's going to get better, but where are we going with all of this? Are we, setting ourselves up? Does China have us in the crosshairs to be upset with us? They're talking about us. Those little things they did with the barley, etc. That's one thing. Is it going to get worse before it gets better?
Well, I think that unless we begin to understand China, it will look like it's getting worse.
Yeah.
Yeah? It's like any relationship. If you have something happen in communication, it's often because you don't understand the other person. Now, this is what's happening. We are simply not understanding. And I'm not saying what anybody's doing is right, wrong, or otherwise, but we are not truly understanding how China thinks and operates.
But a lot of those people will say, though, Leonie, that China should start to understand how we work and operate. Why do we have to bow down to what they're doing?
I'm not saying we don't have to bow down to anything.
Correct, right.
China doesn't have to bow. China is not asking us to be Chinese.
Yes, gotcha.
We are not asking China to be Australian.
Yep.
I am simply saying, understand the thinking. This is not about being Chinese at all. Yeah. This is not about it. This is about just simply understanding how someone thinks.
Really love this, Leonie. Really do love this, because this has got to be a change of mindset, not just for Australia, China, etc. If we really want this to work and operate, we've got to make leeway here. We've got to make arrangements so that both parties do fit. But if, like we do with everything, and this is partly why we do meet the media, is when you understand how the media cycle works, when you understand the operations, the little idiosyncrasies. Get that out, Nick. I don't know what that is in Chinese, Leonie, but it would be a really strange word. I wouldn't be able to get it out. But I think we've got to understand they've got to understand the playing field. And when you do know and understand that, you can negotiate best.
Oh, exactly. You have to understand the landscape. And I think too, part of it's probably not a bad comparison to media and China and Chinese culture. But, if you want to play in that area, if you want to be in the environment, you have to understand it. But I think there's a fear that kicks in because people don't understand the Chinese culture. And I think, Leonie, they perhaps don't understand what their motivations are, what their intentions are here in Australia. I think there'd be a lot of people that would think, they just want to buy the entire country. Yeah. But maybe if we went, to further lengths to understand how we could work together to a mutually beneficial outcome, then, things wouldn't be so tricky.
Well, I think, like anything, the more you understand, the more you can push.
Yeah.
Because when you don't understand something, you don't know where to go. You don't know whether you're going over the line or under the line. So, and it's like that with the media. You're absolutely right. When you understand the media more, you can push them.
Yes.
If you don't understand them, you are consumed by them.
True.
It's exactly the same. Yes. So you've got this line. If you can think, you can't see me right now, but if I was to draw a line on a whiteboard, all right, and there's your knowledge, and if your knowledge is near that line, then you can push. But if your knowledge isn't, you don't know. It's like if you walk into a room with Chinese people, if you don't know the hierarchy, you don't know where to sit. So therefore you get insecure because you don't understand what's going on. It's a lot of fear. So when that kicks in, you don't understand where to push the boundaries, because business is about pushing boundaries. Media is about pushing boundaries.
Ooh, I love that.
That's what I see it as.
I love that connection. Leonie. And you're right. I could start an international incident if I walk into a room not knowing with the right person to be sitting next to, or
that wouldn't surprise me.
But the more knowledge you have on anything, it doesn't matter what it is, you can push those boundaries. And if you don't have the knowledge, you're always in this position of just not knowing. And look, I've spoken to people who are doing very well in China, and they may not know this stuff. And then, but there's always at some point when something comes unstuck and they don't understand it. So my thing is, get the knowledge, understand it, because, and it's like people say, oh, well, how will I know which strategy? How will I know? You know, because it becomes unconscious. It's like driving a car. How do you know when to turn the keys on? How do you know when to change the gears or whatever? It's unconscious. So these strategies become an unconscious action.
Just like riding a bike, Leonie. Riding a bike. It just comes naturally. Now, let's talk media. Let's talk media.
Media, yep.
What have you done? What's been the media reaction to you with your topics, with your conversations? Because I dare say, look, pandemic, and there's a president over there. I'm not sure if he's going to be still president by the time this goes to air, but he sort of blamed the Chinese for the COVID and the pandemic, but also too, we have been completely consumed by that. What's been your media experience to date? How's it gone for you? And I want to preface this with a little commentary. I think your leadership and expertise is going to be very much needed over the next, not 12 months, not 24. I'm going to go 36 months because it does take time, this, doesn't it? And I think we've got a fair bit coming at us.
Yes. So what your question is about how the media have taken my ideas and what they want. Is your question about what the media have wanted to talk about?
Yes.
Okay. What the media have wanted to talk about is what's happening daily in China. So it could be that it could be the situation with Daniel Andrews, not with what's happening with COVID, but with the Belt and Road situation when he signed the deal with China. That's been very controversial. And why? And what is Belt and Road? What's happened? Why are people angry about it? That kind of thing. It could be the wine situation about the anti-dumping and the tariff. So it's generally, it could be something that is a regular celebration. However, at the moment, it's more about what's going on a daily basis. So, and the celebrations could be Chinese New Year or something like that. And there's another one coming up. It's not actually a celebration, but it's on the 11th of November. The biggest online sales in the world through Chinese internet and Alibaba and all that kind of thing. It's massive. So, and that's a great opportunity for Australian companies to get in and put their product up there. So it's mostly what's happening on a daily basis. I think that the media like to hook on to something that's negative, and that's fine.
Yep.
Oh my God, somebody's been detained in China. What does that mean? It's very much that. That's okay. So it's much more about what people are generally thinking about China. It's very much a public view.
Do you feel like you have to defend China? Is it something that you feel, or do you feel like you're informing?
I don't defend China. I don't defend Australia. Okay?
Yep.
I'm not on anybody's side. And I simply am a bridge to understand Chinese culture. And from living and working and, speaking Mandarin, because I studied Mandarin for 5 years in Taiwan, understanding the 36 strategies, writing books, that kind of thing. There's things that I learnt from Chinese culture that I love, and there's things that I don't love. It's the same with Australian culture. So for me, no, I'm not at all into defending China, but I certainly will, talk about how the thinking and the negotiation and the differences in how people think.
Well, I think that's the measure of a great expert, Leonie. You're not necessarily you can see both sides of the debate, but you're providing, when those things do pop up in the news, like, you mentioned the wine example and obviously the barley, you can provide a lens, you can provide a different perspective to perhaps what the common view is or what the common understanding might be. And I think that's adding a really valuable narrative into the media landscape.
Well, the method I use too, Lana, and you may have seen that I've used it several times through this interview, is that I take people through what they already know to help them understand it. So, for example, when Nick talked about, the 10 Commandments and he joked, I said, yes, you can even joke about that. Then he thought, oh, yeah, I can. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
I took you through your understanding of the Western idiom. And once you understood that, then you got that, okay, that's right, because that's how a strategy would work. So I locate.
You're using the 36 strategies on us right now, aren't you, Leonie?
No, I'm actually using my anthropological understanding, because I studied anthropology at university, and it's also about looking at advertising and that kind of thing, because I'm very interested in popular culture. So, how do people bring in a new product? You take it through what people already know.
Oh, I love that.
And so that's how I help people understand the thinking. Because if I just said, oh yeah, the strategies, it's like, yeah, or, I didn't give you a point of reference, then it becomes something that, is really difficult for you to understand because you've got no point of reference.
That's so applicable for media too, Leonie. You know, you've got to give people that point of reference because otherwise it's not relatable. They can't kind of digest the point you're trying to make because it doesn't mean anything to them.
Correct. And particularly in something that is not necessarily as confusing but also just so unknown.
Yeah.
We need to have a point of reference, but we can change the way we behave or think about a certain thing when we can compare, and that's what we're doing. Leonie, we're running out of time. Hey, we could talk for hours, and I wouldn't want to talk in Mandarin because I don't want to upset you or my great Mandarin linguistics. But look, if there was a piece of advice you could give to someone that's coming through the system, what would you say to them when coming to work with media through your experience?
What I would say is, working with media, you need to be onto it. So, you know, you can't just expect, you know, someone to send you something and go, oh, yeah, you've got to listen to the radio in the morning. You've got to look at what's going on. You've got to listen to the podcast. You've got to really, really, really see what's happening on that day because the next day it will be old.
Yeah.
You know, like what's happening today will be gone tomorrow. So it's like you have to be right onto it all the time, and you've got to throw yourself into it.
Leonie, the last 29 minutes has been pure gold, but that was just platinum.
Oh, yeah, that was perfect.
That was platinum.
So true.
You've got to dive into it because and learn it. And when you look at it, learn it. Listen to what people are saying, and you know, if you're hearing something on the radio and you don't catch it, you know, there's always a podcast. You know, Radio National have always got early in the morning breakfast. They've always got their great interviews there.
Pure.
You know, and there's always something on. So, you know, you can look at it, and what happens is when you start working with the media, your eyes and ears start to look at things more deeply. And for me, it's been good because it's much more of a daily thing. It's not just, oh, Leonie knows about the strategies. It's like, okay, how can you use these strategies? Oh, this is what happened today. This is what's happening today. And it's actually helped me a lot because I've been forced into, well, not forced. I mean, if you want to learn, or if you want your maximum sort of whatever out of media, well, then you look at things and you see things, you know, every day, and then you can compare them, who's what, and you get to know the other experts and that kind of thing.
Absolute gold. Leonie, loved it. Loved the chat. If people want to get in contact with Leonie McKeon, author and also speaker, how can they do that?
Okay, now I just want one thing, Nick. Yeah. Only one small thing.
Yeah.
It's McKeon.
Oh, geez, I've butchered another name.
No problem at all.
Yeah.
No problem at all. Just because people might see it's EO, it's actually McKeon.
Yeah, you know.
Yeah, that's all. No problem. I just thought I'd tell you that because people might be looking for another name.
I do it on purpose. I do it on purpose, Leonie, so that you can correct me and establish.
That's right, and that's what I thought.
That was one of the strategies.
You've been reading my book.
I have been.
You're a great student. You're a great student. Okay, how can people get in touch with me? It's LeonieMcKeon.com. So it's, you know, LeonieMcKeon.com. Go onto the website. I've got a great blog. There's lots of stuff up there on the blog. My books are all up there. You can buy them online. You'll see the clients that I work with. You know, there's a whole bunch of stuff up there. My email address is there, my telephone number. Get in contact with me.
Get in touch.
Get in touch with Leonie. Leonie, great to have you on the Experts Podcast. Lana, another great one.
Oh, well done, Nick Hayes. Thanks, Leonie.
Thanks, Leonie.
Bye.
And we look forward to having your company with another expert or another media next week. That was All Things China. We look forward to see what's next week.
You have been listening to the Experts Podcast powered by MediaStable. To get in touch with the team, head to the MediaStable website, mediastable.com.au.